to ask the Chairman of Manx Utilities how much Manx Utilities has committed to spending on smart metering project and under what parliamentary authority this expenditure will be incurred.
From the Chairman of the MUA, Dr Allenson, to reply.
Mr President, Manx Utilities recently announced investment in an improved metering system to replace ageing key meters with new smart meters as part of a rollout for smart meters for all customers on the Isle of Man, which will commence in 2020. I can confirm the complete budget of this scheme is expected to be £18.15 million over a 10-year period, which includes a 4-year capital investment programme of £10.8 million and contingency funding. Manx Utilities is required to maintain its electricity network, which includes electricity meters within customer properties. It operates rolling programmes for the maintenance, refurbishment and replacement of these assets on a continuous basis, and existing electricity meters are replaced as required as part of these programmes. The move to smart meters has significant social and economic benefits, and therefore it was decided to temporarily accelerate the meter replacement programme. Annual costs for meter changes and wider electrical network refurbishment and improvement are included in Manx Utilities budgets and the Government Capital Programme. The initial sum of £4.2 million is included in the 2019 budget, which was voted on and approved by Tynwald. Given that smart metering represents a step change in service provision and that some new infrastructure is required to provide remote communications, Manx Utilities sought approval for the programme both from the Treasury and the Council of Ministers, following my own board's approval. However, the majority of the £18 million of costs, including the purchase of new meters and the cost of addressing legacy installation issues, were already factored into existing budgets and would be required regardless as to whether ageing electricity meters are replaced with smart or non-smart meters. The main impact of the smart metering programme is a temporary acceleration of the replacement programme in order to more quickly realise the benefits from smart meters for Manx Utilities, its customers and the Isle of Man as a whole. Thank you, Mr President.
Supplementary message.
Thank you, Mr President. I thank the Chairman for that response. As far back as March and June 2018, the Honourable Member stood up in this court and said that he'd had approval for £18.5 million. Obviously, I've got the budget for that year, and there was certainly no projection going forward in the capital programme for smart meters. However, I can see that it is in the 1920 as a line of £4.2 million. What I'd like to ask the Honourable Chairman of Manx Utilities is, it's clear from the pricing review which this Honourable Court has approved, it stated on the back of that, and I'm sure all members have read this, that it would be a gradual replacement to existing meter programmes, and it would be an annualised positive amount of £212,000. I'm just concerned that the MUA seem to have gone away from what was in their pricing strategy and very little about smart metering. So therefore I'd like to ask the member, would he be prepared to circulate to all honourable members a timeline of minutes from the board, the Treasury meetings and financial approvals for smart metering that haven't come before this court?
Chairman to reply.
Well, thank you very much, Mr President. I'm very happy to produce that timeline for the Honourable Member and circulate that to all members.
Supplementary, Mr Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr President. In your initial answer, you identify the programme as lasting over 10 years. In terms of the lifespan of these devices, it's normally 10 years. Does this suggest this is going to be an ongoing cost of at least 1.8 million and is actually getting nowhere, really, ultimately, just replacing what we're replacing?
Dr Allenson.
Thank you, Mr President. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for his question. Electricity meters of whatever nature do break, do need replacement on a regular basis, and we replace approximately 10% of those on a regular basis, whether they be the current meters or the new smart meters. That's factored into our operational budget and is an ongoing cost. So the Honourable Member is quite right that these bits of apparatus don't last forever and need ongoing maintenance and replacement. Thank you.
Honourable Member Mr Peake.
Thank you, Mr President. Would the Chair of the MUA agree with me that the installation of these smart meters is integral to the future upgrading of the network and allow future-proofing in the ability for the MUA to actually download electricity and upload electricity from new devices in the future, and this really will enable the network to be efficiently used and not have massive investment in upgrading cables. This will actually allow the infrastructure to be used to its utmost in the near future.
Dr Allinson.
Thank you, Mr President. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for his question. He is quite right. There are a number of reasons why Manx Utilities have accelerated on the programme to replace meters. First of all was a pragmatic response to the fact that our current manufacturers of the present meters no longer make them, and so it's getting increasingly difficult to replace like for like. As the Honourable Member for Onchan, Mrs Edge, pointed out last year, there were problems with the prepayment system as well, and when we looked at procuring a prepayment system like for like, that was also very difficult. So we made the decision to bring in smart meters to replace that prepayment system. However, extending them to all customers on the Isle of Man give quite significant benefits in terms of managing demand and also managing consumption of electricity, to give that ability for people in the future to have that choice. And so if we can balance the demand and create a smart grid, that will inevitably help with some of the climate change mitigation factors that this country needs to face. Thank you, Mr President.
Mr Speaker.
Thank you. Focusing more on the second half of the question, does the Chairman concur that an £18 million spending commitment without Tynwald approval reflects a democratic deficit in our budget system?
Chairman to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I don't want to get into a row with the Chair of the Public Accounts Committee over deficits of budgets, but what we, Manx Utilities, have tried to do is separate out over a 10-year period some of the capital investment with the operational costs of the new system. Those operational costs are currently borne by our budget in terms of our existing meters. They will be slightly increased over the course of 10 years by adopting a newer technology. However, what I have said with the 18.5 million is the overall budget. That includes various factors, including contingency funds, interest payments, and is just a budget. And what we are hoping to do by procurement is to bring this programme in line under budget. Thank you, Mr President.
Mr Hooper, supplementary.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Appreciating what the Chairman has said about this being an upgrade, really it is just replacing, it seems to me, meters with meters, for want of a better phrase. I'd just like the Chairman to confirm something, because I know there are a number of people out there who are very concerned about this concept of smart metering. I'd just like him to confirm, for the avoidance of doubt, that whilst smart meters will be rolled out across the island, actually not all of them will be required to be smart. So if an individual has particular concerns about having a smart meter, whilst they will have the meter installed, the module that connects it to the wireless network, it can be turned off, essentially, for want of a better phrase.
Chairman.
Thank you, Mr President. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Ramsey for pointing this out. The installation of smart meters will start in 2020 and will be a rolling programme initially concentrated on those people who use the prepayment system, which we know is under threat at the moment due to technical difficulties. Following on from that, we will then extend that to all current electricity users, both commercial and domestic. There are some people who are concerned about smart meters, both in terms of the rollout in the United Kingdom, which had some fundamental problems with it, but also in terms of the technology being used. And each of those cases will be dealt with on an individual basis. We will try to address those concerns as much as possible with the individuals. And for those people who do not want a smart meter in terms of its connectivity, we will find a compromise that suits them. Thank you.
Member Mr Callister.
Thank you, Mr President. I think the Chairman's just answered my question, and that was asking the Chairman if he could just outline the people that do choose to opt out of this scheme, because I know a few constituents within Onchan who've asked the Chairman if they can opt out, and maybe if the Chairman can just elaborate a little bit more on that, because there are people who would like to look at alternative options if possible.
Dr Aronson.
Mr President, I'd be more than happy to reply to my honourable colleague. The current situation is, as the rollout progresses, those people who do have concerns, do have reservations, will be moved to the back of the queue. So there'll be no forcing anyone to replace a meter. When we get to the back of the queue, then we'll go back to them and ask them whether they'd like to carry on with their existing meter for as long as possible, or whether they'd like an alternative, which would be the smart meter, but with the communications module removed from it. That would mean that we'd have to continue to do manual meter readings, and obviously we'd have to make a budget for that into our overall budget to take things forward in the future. Thank you.
Final supplementary, Miss Edge.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask the Chairman, and sort of in concurrence with what the Speaker has raised, it clearly was not in the programme for their spend. Prior to it being announced in this Honourable Court in March and June in 2018. So therefore, bearing in mind the concerns Manx public have around the finances, or have previously had, with regards to the MUA, and there's been plenty of reports done into that, is the Honourable Member going to consider reviewing the pricing strategy that came before this Honourable Court and update it in line with what they have decided to spend? And I think it is critically important that we do receive the timeline of when approvals were received by the MUA board, by Treasury or by this Honourable Court for this programme. And I'd also like to just make one comment, one more further comment. The reports that come out from the MUA never have a date on, and I find that quite a critical position for the Executive to be in, that they're not dating reports.
Dr Allinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As I've said, I'm quite happy to circulate a timeline for the decision-making on this, including what was put into the 2019 budget and also what was put into the 2019 capital, government capital programme. If the Honourable Member would like to tell me exactly which reports she finds weren't dated, I'll be trying to rectify that. Thank you.